Right, Shalom. It's Daniel Allah from Sicarii, Las Vegas. Out here in this city that they call Sin City. Gonna do a presentation on the Northern Kingdom. This is going to be really just part one of this presentation, because when it comes to the Northern Kingdom, the Negroes, Latinos, Slovakia, the Latinos and the Native Americans, it's a lot of information to then get to doing this research. It's just so many things that you could tie into through all the different tribes of the indigenous people of the Americas. It's so many things that you could go into, from their oral traditions to the accounts that happened to them um, that match up with the curses of the Bible spoken of in Deuteronomy 28. And it's their creation stories, their customs, the way their culture was, the linguistics, their language, the dialects in their language. It's just so many things that we could bring out. So this is not something that I feel could be done in just in one video. So we're gonna get started with this presentation right now. First and foremost, we want to give all honors, glory, and praise to Yahweh Bashem Yahushua, that's the Most High, in the name of His Holy Son, which is our King. Who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. So with no further ado, let's get this started. So it's the Northern Kingdom, tribes in the Americas, proving the lost 10 tribes of Israel. So the lost tribes, it says, these tribes consist of the indigenous peoples of the Americas before and after colonization. We are going to observe how these peoples hold close similarities and are in fact the Israelites the Holy Bible speak of. Historical accounts as well as the Holy Bible will also be presented to prove that the so-called Latinos and natives of the Americas are Israelites. All praises, glory be to Yahweh Bashem Yahushua, Most High, in the name of our King. Right here, you see a chart of the northern tribes. Ephraim, that's the so-called Puerto Ricans. Manasseh, that's the Cubans. Simeon, Dominicans. Zebulon, Guatemala to Panama. Their Mesoamerican name, the Mayans. Gad, Native American Indians. Reuben is the Seminole Indians. Asher, Colombia to Uruguay. Their Mesoamerican name is the Incas. Issachar, the Mexicans. Their Mesoamerican name is the Aztecs. Naphtali, that's Argentina to Chile. So let's go on. Next slide. Says a peculiar people, because that's what the Most High made us, being Israelites, the Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, the Northern and Southern Kingdom. That's what He made us. He made us to be a peculiar people, a special. That word peculiar means special. So He made us to be a special people above all the people upon the face of the earth. Above every other nation that's out there, we are special to the Lord Himself. He chose us to be His inheritance. So we're going to go into Deuteronomy 10, 12 through 15. Starting at verse 12, it says, and now Israel, what doth the Lord require of thee? But to fear the Lord thy God, to walk in all His ways, and to love Him, and to serve the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, to keep the commandments of the Lord and His statutes, which I command thee this day for thy good. That was Moses speaking. It says, behold, the heaven and the heaven of heavens is the Lord thy God. The earth also, and all that is therein. Everything is the Most High. He created everything through His Son and the angels, and everything is His. It says, only the Lord had a delight in thy fathers, our forefathers, to love them, and He chose their seed, Abraham, Isaac, to Jacob. After them, even you, even us, even Israelites, even the offspring of Jacob, above all people, as it is this day. And it's still like that today. The Lord still chose us today. He didn't choose any other nation. He doesn't change. He didn't change His mind. The Most High is perfect. So there's no need for Him to change. There's no need for Him to repent. So He chose us above all people, as it is this day. Deuteronomy 11, 26 to 28 says, behold, I set before you this day a blessing and a curse. A blessing if ye obey the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you this day, and a curse if ye will not obey, Salakia, the commandments of the Lord your God, but turn aside out of the way, which I command you this day, to go after other gods which ye have not known. And that's what we're going to kind of focus and harp on in this presentation. That's what we kind of focus on when we address our people and we bring the curses out as the identity markers, because right now we're not a blessed people. We're not physically above all the nations on the earth. We're at the tail right now. We're at the bottom of the totem pole. So the way we identify us modern day, because we have no genealogical records that we could pull up because all those records were destroyed. We have no real way that we could identify ourselves as the Israelites, because the heathens, namely Esau, he made it possible for us to not be able to do that. He stripped away our identity, he stripped away our culture, our practices, our language, and then the Amalekites, they stole that and they took our land, they took our identity, they assumed our identity. Matter of fact, let's get that. They held crafty counsel against us, for us to forget ourselves and for us to be no more in remembrance of who we are. So let's get that real fast. This is Psalms chapter 83, starting at verse 3. It says, they have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent, they are confederate against thee. The tabernacles of Edom, that's the so-called white man, and the Ishmaelites, that's the so-called Arabs, of Moab, that's the Chinese, and the Hagarenes. And it goes on to say the other nations that consulted against us. But you see, it says, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. And our people, we don't have any remembrance of who we are. That's why we come back to this and we identify ourselves through the curses and through what we were going to be going through in these days. Let's pull up this other precept real quick. Let's see real fast. If I could pull it up. Where is it at? So loud. Looking for the precept where we're supposed to call these things to mind. The blessing and the curses. There you go. So it's Deuteronomy 31 says, and it shall come to pass when all these things are come upon thee. Which one? The blessing and the curses. And right now we're under the curses, which I have set before thee, and thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations, whither the Lord thy God hath driven thee. Right now we're driven into America. It says, and thou shalt return unto the Lord thy God, and shalt obey his voice according to all that I command thee this day, thou and thy children, with all thine heart and with all thy soul, that then the Lord thy God will turn thy captivity, turn our slavery, and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all the nations where the Lord thy God hath scattered thee. If any of thine be driven out unto the utmost parts of heaven, from thence will the Lord thy God gather thee, and from thence will he fetch thee. So this is how we come back into remembrance. We call the blessings and the curses. And right now we're under the curses. So this is how we set our identity markers. We call the curses. We identify our people through the curses. So let's check out some of the curses. Deuteronomy 28:15, but it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all the curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. Deuteronomy 28:68, one of the main curses that we identify ourselves by. Now, this is a curse that a lot of people may identify the Southern Kingdom, the Negroes, identify the Negroes with, but they fail to realize that Northern Kingdom, Latinos, and Native Americans were also taken into bondage by the way of ships. They were also part of a slave trade and were on these ships with a lot of Negroes at the same time. Deuteronomy 28:68, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt, which means bondage, again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Now, Egypt is synonymous with bondage. It didn't literally mean that he was going to bring us back into Egypt on boats, just like we was in servitude under the Egyptians when we got led out of Egypt and the Exodus happens. This meant we were going to go back into slavery by the way of ships. So let's prove that Egypt is synonymous with bondage real quick. Let's get Exodus 13. So this is Exodus 13, verse 3. It says, and Moses said unto the people, remember this day which ye came, in which ye came out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage, for by the strength of the hand of the Lord brought you out from this place. There shall no leavened bread be eaten. So you see it. Came out from Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Let's start verse real quick. Verse 14. Let's go back. Let's go back, brothers. So verse 14. And it shall be when thy son asketh thee in time to come, saying, what is this that thou shalt say unto him? By strength of the hand of the Lord brought us out from Egypt, from the house of bondage. You see? Exodus 20:2. Let's go back to it. Let's pound it in real quick. Find another precept that shows you Egypt is synonymous with bondage. It's a lot. I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. So Egypt is synonymous with bondage. So when he says he's going to bring us into Egypt by ships, he's going to bring us back into slavery by ships. So it says, and the Lord thy God shall bring thee into Egypt, again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. So here we're going to be sold unto our enemies for slaves, and no man is going to buy us. That word buy right there means to redeem, means to save us. Because if we were sold as slaves, of course we were bought. So that word buy right there, okay, let's just go ahead and get that. Let's show you redeem. It's one thing when you deal with the Bible, you have to deal with the original language that it was written in to find out true meanings of a lot of these words. Because in English is a confusing language. English is a broad language. You have you have one word for four different meanings. Four, and four. No and no. For example, so bondage or buy, kana, to get, acquire, create, buy, or possess. Redeeming his people. So it said no man was going to redeem us. No man was going to possess us back from our bondage that we were in. See, of God originating, creating, and redeeming his people. Now, the Northern Kingdom tribes in the Americas. How did the Northern Kingdom get to this bondage? Because before the Northern Kingdom Negroes and Latinos fled to America, we were in under bondage under the Assyrians. This is when the kingdoms split up after the rulership of King Solomon. Then you have the Northern Kingdom, you have the Southern Kingdom. Under King Solomon, both of the kingdoms, all the tribes were in unity. They were under one, under one banner. So now these tribes are split up. You have the Northern Kingdom, you have the Southern Kingdom. Ephraim was usually the king and the head of the Northern Kingdom. So it's 2 Ezra 13, 39 through 46, starting at verse 39, it says, "And whereas thou sawest that he gathered another peaceable multitude unto him, those are the 10 tribes, which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king, whom Salmanasar the king of Assyria led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land. But they took counsel among themselves that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt." Because over here in the so-called New World, in the Americas, man did not inhabit this land. We knew about this land, but it wasn't inhabited. It wasn't inhabited as it is now. That they might keep their statutes, verse 42, that they might keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land. And they entered into Euphrates by the narrow places of the river. For the Most High then shewed signs for them and held still the flood till they were passed over. Now the Most High, he shewed signs in the heavens and in the skies. Let's get that to prove that real quick. Genesis 1:14 says, "And God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night." That's the sun and the moon. "And let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years." So you see right here, it says, let them be for signs, right? "And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heavens to give light upon the earth." And it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And one thing that a tribe in the Northern Kingdom was great and good at was being able to read the signs and the stars. That was the Aztecs, so-called Mexicans of today. Let's see. Which is of the tribe of Issachar. Let me see. Where is it at? There we go. So it's First Chronicles 12 and 32. It says, "And of the children of Issachar, which were men that had understanding of the times, to know what Israel ought to do, the heads of them were 200, and all their brethren were at their commandment." So it said they had knowledge to know what to do and had understanding of the times. So the Most High sent signs in the heavens, and guess who was reading the signs in the heavens to tell us when to go set forth, when the flood was over, when to sail, when to pass the waters, when the waters weren't rough, when it wasn't a storm. It was the Issacharites. So it says, "For the Most High then shewed signs for them and held still the flood till they passed over. For through that country there was a great way to go, namely a year and a half, in the same region is called Ashereth." Now, pay attention to that, namely a year and a half, because we're going to go pull it up in First Kings and show you that we been knew about this land through one of the wisest kings ever to exist, King Solomon. It's a lot. What is that? First Kings 10. Verse 11. It says, "In the navy." Oh, slow down, Turbo. It says, "In the navy also of Haram, that brought gold from Ophir, brought in from Ophir great plenty of almug trees and precious stones. So we know that King Solomon had a navy, a fleet navy. That was the navy of Haran. And we go down to verse 22. It says, "For the king had at sea a navy of Tarshish with the navy of Haran. Once in 3 years came the navy of Tarshish, bringing gold, silver, ivory, apes, and peacocks." So King Solomon had a navy that would go travel for him over here to the Americas, and it would get these great resources and we bring back these exotic animals for him. Now, you notice how it says, once in 3 years came the navy of Tarshish. Once in 3 years came the navy of Tarshish, basically came back. Why did it say once in 3 years? Because it says, namely, of a year and a half it took just to get there. So a year and a half to get there and about a year and a half to get back. Verse 46, then dwelt they there until the latter time, and now when they shall begin to come. Now, who utilized this information to find out or to get over here to the Americas? And to a matter of fact, before I even bring this up, let's go to this real quick because I did look this up real fast. Where is it at? Hurry up and pull up. Come on now. Oh, don't close it. Don't close it. Come on. Oh, if you close it, I'm going to be mad. Wow. Let's get back to it. Come on. Reload. Ain't no all snap. Oh, I forgot rid of. Oh man. Well, I wish it wouldn't have did that. But basically, let's see if I could go back real quick. So basically, I did a small calculation. It said back during those times, around 720 BC, that's when we fled out of Syrian captivity around that time period. It said each ship sailed at cruising speed of 3 knots. So what I did was go over here to land of Assyria, and I measured down the river Euphrates, through the Persian Gulf, all around there, all down through here, down through here. Basically, I came around Africa, all through here, all up here, and then came over here, which is the route they would have took. And it said it took roughly in the high 200s, right below 300. But we know that making this travel by ship, you have to make stops at times. You have to re-up on food, re-up on your resources and essentials that you need. And it also says that he had to do what for them? It also says that he had to show them signs and hold still a flood till they were able to pass over. So they had to basically dock on the ports at sometimes, and they had to just sit there and chill and wait for the Issacharites to tell them that, okay, now we can sail. The storm is past. The flood is held. So it took about a year and a half to get there. But I wanted to show you that I had the days calculated and everything, but, technology ain't technologicing right now. So we're going to move on. It says the Holy Bible and Christopher Columbus. Azareth. by Morris J. Straw Jr. and Kaufman Kohler. Now, this is something that they wrote, and these are not just any regular men. I'm gonna read about them right now. Morris J. Straw Jr. Was born August 13, 1861, died June 22nd, 1921. He was born a Polish-American Orientalist and librarian who was associated with the University of Pennsylvania. His father, Marcus J. Straw, was a renowned Talmudic scholar. He graduated from the University of Pennsylvania in 1881. He received a PhD at the University of Leipzig. He went on to study Semitic languages at the Sorbonne, the College de France. He went to devote himself entirely to linguistics and archaeological studies. He joined the University of Pennsylvania as an instructor of Semitic languages, becoming a professor in 1891. In 1888, he became a librarian at the university, elevating his status to librarian-in-chief by 1898. He became the president of biblical literature in 1916. He contributed articles and was an editor of the Scholarly Jewish Encyclopedia 1901 through 06. He was also a contributor to the Encyclopedia Biblica 1903, Encyclopedia Britannica 11th edition, the New International Encyclopedia, and Webster's Dictionary. Kaufman Kohler was born May 10th, 1843, died January 28th, 1926, was a German-born Jewish American biblical scholar and critic, theologian, Reformed rabbi, and contributing editor to numerous articles of the Jewish Encyclopedia in 1906. In February 26, 1903, he was elected to the presidency of the Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati. Kohler served for many years as president of the New York Board of Ministers and was honorary president of the Central Conference of American Rabbis. In 1903, he delivered a series of lectures at the Jewish Theological Seminary on apocryphal literature. So these weren't any regular men. These men had definitely time to study. They studied a lot about the Shemitic culture. So these aren't any regular men, any regular Edomites that's talking about this. You know, these are so-called well-studied, well-versed, and highly knowledgeable Edomites that's speaking on this. So it says, the name of the land beyond the great river, far away from the habitation of man, in which the 10 tribes of Israel will dwell, observing the laws of Moses until the time of restoration, according to 2nd Ezra 13:45, Columbus identified America with this land. You see, it says Columbus's obsessions with lineages and imperialism, his zealous religious belief, his enslaving of indigenous peoples, and his execution of colonial subjects come from a world remote from that of modern democratic ideas, but it was a world in which he belonged. But pay attention, he says his obsessions with lineages. So let's look at this real quick. I say that because Christopher Columbus had an obsession with lineage, which meant he studied who was over here in these Americas. That's why he also brought Hebrew translators with him, because he knew who was over here in these Americas. He knew that the people in the Americas were of the tribes of Israel. So what was that movie? 1492? See if we could find that little quick. They got a movie. They even have a movie clip on it. Let's see. This is right here.
Why did you wish to sail west?
To open a new route to Asia. Asia is the richest kingdom, the land of spices and gold. At the moment, there are only two ways of reaching.
So out there.
It. By sea, sailing around the African continent. The journey takes a year, or by land. But the Turks have closed this route to all Christians. There is a third way. By sailing west across the ocean sea.
The distance is unknown. It's said
You notice he said going around through Africa.
to be infinite.
Superstition. I believe the Indies are no more than 750 leagues west of the Canary Islands.
Can you be so certain?
The calculations of Toscanelli, Marin de Tir, Esdras.
Esdras is a Jew.
So what's worse?
2 minutes, and already you're a dead man.
For telling the truth?
Yes. We are burning people for less. The men you're about to confront have no emotion.
So he knew about this land through our book, and that's exactly what Esau does. He takes our book and uses it against us as a weapon. So it says, our first winds carried the fleet to an island called Haiti, by its Taino inhabitants. Kwame Asharala. On December 6th, Columbus renamed it La Isla Española or Hispaniola. He seems
Shopify helps you sell at every stage of your business. So you can sell it online, take it in person, and go big, like 1 million orders big.
Excuse me. No, still learning to use this thing. All right, let's start back over. It says the first winds carried the fleet to an island called Haiti, by its Taino inhabitants. On December 6th, Columbus renamed it La Isla Española or Hispaniola. He seems to have thought that Hispaniola might be Capango, or if not Capango, then perhaps one of the legendary rich isles from which King Solomon's Trinio fleet brought back gold, gems, and spices to Jerusalem. Alternatively, he reasoned that the island could be related to the biblical kingdom of Sheba. Columbus also read the seer or the prophet Ezra in the book of Ezra from the Apocrypha, especially 2nd Ezra 6:42, in which the prophet states that the earth is 6 parts land to 1 part water, thus reinforcing these ideas of the proportion of land to sea crossing. So just how he knew to get over here to the Americas, we knew to get over to the Americas, but we knew first. And he used our book to get over here to the Americas. They came to enslave. That's the next slide, because that's exactly what Columbus came to do. And all the other conquistadors, so-called explorers, the French, the British, all the Spaniards, they came over here to enslave. So it's from New York Times. It says, to Americans of European descent, this is a comfortable picture, but it diminishes the impact of his tragic legacy on the native peoples of the Americas and Africa. Most school history texts do not tell that Columbus was the first European to bring slavery to the New World. 2 days after he discovered America, Columbus wrote in his journal that with 50 men, he could force the entire population be taken to Castile or held captive. On his second voyage in December 1494, Columbus captured 1,500 of our Taino brothers on the island of Hispaniola, brothers and sisters, on the island of Hispaniola, and herded them to Isabella, where 550 of the best males and females were forced aboard ships bound for the slave market of Seville. Hispaniola, that's the island of Haiti. Under Columbus's leadership, the Spanish attacked the Taínos, sparing neither men, women, nor children. Warfare, forced labor, starvation, and diseases reduced Hispaniola's Taino population, estimated at 1 million or 2 million in 1492, to extinction within 30 years. Look at this. It says, sparing neither women, men, nor children. That reminds me of a precept. Let's go get it real quick. Where is that? Where is it at? says Deuteronomy 28 and 50 says, a nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor shew favor to the young. So it's already one of the curses being identified just through Columbus alone. All right. Let's go to the next slide. It's Vasco Nunez de Balboa. That's another conquistador, another Spaniard who came over here and conquered. He was born in 1475. Jerez de los Caballeros, or Badajoz, Extremadura province. Castal died January 12, 1519, Alcanar Darien, Panama. Spanish conquistador and explorer who was head of the first stable settlement on the South American continent in 1511, who was the first European to sight Eastern Shore on the Pacific on September 25th or 27th, 1513. On the advice of Balboa, the settlers moved across the Gulf of Yoruba to Darien on the less hostile coast of the Isthmus of Panama, where they found the town of Santa Maria de la Antigua, the first stable settlement on the continent, and began to acquire gold by barter or war with the local Indians. Balboa, let's add that big B up in there. Balboa, meanwhile, had organized a series of gold and slave hunting expeditions into the land chiefdoms of the area. His Indian policy combined the use of barter, every kind of force, including torture, to extract information, and the tactic of divide and conquer by forming alliances with certain tribes against others. The Indians of Darien, less warlike than their neighbors of Yoruba, and without poisoned arrows, were not formidable foes and often fled at the approach of the Spaniards. What did it say? Is that not another curse? Look, and the Lord shall cause thy enemies that rise up against thee to be smitten. Oh no, Salakia. 28:25. The Lord shall cause thee to be smitten before thine enemies. Thou shalt go out one way against them and flee 7 ways before them, and shalt be removed into all the kingdoms of the earth, which is captivity. So what did it say? It said that because they were not warlike or less warlike and did not have poison arrows, were not formidable foes. They were not great foes and often fled at the approach of the Spaniards. The Spanish arsenal included their terrible war dogs, sometimes used by Balboa as executioners to tear Indian victims into the pieces, not sparing the old nor the young. Let's go into some more of these curses right here. Deuteronomy 28:16. Cursed shalt thou be in the city, cursed shalt thou be in the field. That's cursed in the field. Look at that. We cursed in the city right now, living in these ghettos, having to sell dope, high crime rate, high murder rates. You know, that's not just the Negroes, that's the Latinos too. If you look into these Negro neighborhoods, a lot of these Negroes, especially along the West Coast, especially in the East Coast, New York, you have the Latinos and the Negroes living in the same goddamn communities. You know, so we all cursed in the city. But this is us cursed in the field also. Not just these Negroes was cursed in the field. You know, much love to the Southern Kingdom, to the Negro brothers, but not just the Negroes was cursed in the field. We was cursed in this field too, man. We served hard bondage and hard servitude under these devils in this field too. You know? It says, the Lord shall make the pestilence cleave unto thee until he have consumed thee from the land whither thou go to possess it. What? Let me see. Listen to pestilences. The deadliest were smallpox, malaria, viral influenza, yellow fever, measles, typhus, bubonic plague, typhoid fever, cholera, cholera, and pertussis, the whooping cough. The word encounter is now preferred to discovery when describing the contacts between Europe and the Americas, and more attention has been paid to the fate of indigenous Americans and to the perspectives of non-Christians. Enlightening discoveries have been made about the diseases that reached the New World through Columbus's agency. National Library of Medicine. There is wide agreement about the effects of diseases and epidemics associated with European contact. The first well-documented widespread epidemic in what was to become New Mexico was smallpox in 1636. Shortly thereafter, measles entered the area, and many pueblos lost as many as a quarter of their inhabitants. After the founding of Spanish settlements and missions, there was substantially more contact. And throughout the 17th century, epidemic diseases was repeatedly imported. Lost a quarter. What did it say? The Lord shall make the pestilence cleave unto thee until he has consumed thee from off the land, whether thou go to possess it. Deuteronomy 28:25. The Lord shall cause thee to be smitten before thy enemies. Thou shalt go out one way against them and flee 7 ways before them, and thou shalt be removed into all the kingdoms of the earth. So we know that precept. And thou shalt be only oppressed and spoiled evermore, and no man shall save thee. See, smitten, oppressed, and spoiled. This is off worldhistory.org. King Philip's War and mass enslavement. Now we're going to be jumping around from the Central Southern America. Select me real quick. Excuse me. Cooking good old horrible eggs for my protein. But yeah, it says we're going to be going around from the Central Southern Americas, Northern Americas. Like I said, this is going to more so be a series because the information I got on just on this presentation alone is just limited information. It's hours and hours and days and weeks of studying all the information that we have about our people and how our people actually fit the curses of the Bible and how we are those Israelites that the Bible talk about. So let's go back on. Smitten, oppressed, and spoiled, worldhistory.org, King Philip's War and mass enslavement. King Philip's War, also known as Metacom's War, 1675 through 1678, was a large-scale conflict between Native American tribes allied with the chief of the Wampanoag Confederacy, Metacom, also known as King Philip I, 1638 to 1676, and the colonists of New England. Metacom was the son of Massasoit, 1581 through 1661, who had helped the pilgrims of the Plymouth colony survive the establish themselves, because we know that when the pilgrims came over here, they did not know how to live off the land. So our Gadite brothers showed them how to till the land, showed them how to survive these winters and this harsh environment for them. It was harsh for them, but we knew how to live off this land. It says Massasoit had signed the Pilgrim Wampanoag Peace Treaty, which, man, if we go into the peace treaties that this devil made with our Gadite brothers, our people over here in the Americas, they broke every single one. They made over 500 treaties with the Gadites and broke every single one. Every single one. It says Massasoit has signed the Pilgrim Wampanoag Peace Treaty with the first governor of Plymouth, John Carver, 1584 through 1621. In 1621, and this treaty was honored until after Massasoit's death. At this time, Josiah Winslow, 1628 to 1680, assistant governor and then governor of Plymouth, initiated policies depriving the Wampanoag of more and more land until Metacom finally took a stand to protect his people and their way of life. The civilization and Christianization of the natives continued throughout the 18th and 19th centuries, but overt enslavement of the Native Americans, so-called, ended around 1750 as Africans became the more popular commodity of the slave trade. So now we're tying the northern tribes' enslavement with the southern tribes' enslavement. Given we were in slavery before the southern kingdom got over here and were stolen and brought over here, but yet the southern kingdom were not the only ones in slavery under this devil. We were all in slavery under this devil. That was part of the curse that we had for disobeying the commandments and not walking in the statutes that our God gave us to live by, being a people above all the people on the face of the earth. We chose to be like the other people, so we were put under the other people. It says, even after slavery was officially abolished in 1865, however, Native Americans continued to be enslaved in North America under the guise of this effort to civilize them. Because why? We were all animals and beasts in their eyes. Let's go back up. It says the Dawes Act of 1887 deprived natives of their traditional lands and forced each tribe to prove its Indianness. Right. To be eligible for its return. Natives had no right to vote and, after the Dawes Act, no right to the lands which they had lived on for thousands of years. We ain't gonna say thousands, but which they had lived on before this devil got over here. In addition to having to prove they were legitimate American Indians, tribes were forced to recognize the European definition of property rights, which were completely alien to the indigenous peoples. Deprived of land, identity, and civil rights, natives who were not already restrictive to reservations worked essentially as slaves for poor wages or just room and board, just worked for housing, basically. This goddamn devil. So now, Smith, Oppress, and Spoil. Back to worldhistory.org. Jamestown and the Powhatan Wars. The French and Dutch initially tried to profit from the Native Americans by employing them as guides, hunters, fishers, and trappers, although their ships participated in the slave trade to the south. Only later on would they engage in the kidnapping and sale of the natives to Spanish plantations in other regions. When the English established the Jamestown colony of Virginia in 1607, they took a completely different approach and expected the tribes of Powhatan Confederacy to support them as the first colonists had no idea how to do that for themselves. So it says, within 3 years of their arrival, the first of the Anglo-Powhatan Wars, you can look that up, 1610 through 1646, had broken out and natives were enslaved as prisoners of war, POWs, 1610. The Pequot War and first large-scale enslavement. While Jamestown and its satellite colonies were developing, the English were establishing the New England colonies to the north. Disputes over land and trade rights increased tensions between colonists and the Native American Pequot tribe in the 1630s, eventually leading to the Pequot War 1636 to 1638. Forgive me if I'm pronouncing it wrong. And the first evidence of wide-scale enslavement of Native Americans. Scholar James D. Drake comments. So, these are these curses being played out through the hands of these white men. Thou shalt betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her. Thou shalt build a house, and thou shalt not dwell in. Thou shalt plant a vineyard, and shalt not gather the grapes thereof. We know about the mass rapings of our women. Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in thy hands. Our kids were going to be sold as slaves, going to be traded as slaves, taken from us as slaves and sent to another colony, sent to another slave owner, sold to another slave owner. The Lord shall bring thee and thy king, which thou shalt set over thee, into a nation which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, and there thou shalt serve other gods wood and stone. That's the conversion. That's the them converting us to this Christianity. If you go to Brazil, you got this large ass stone monument of white Jesus, for our people to worship down there. You got the wood crosses that were put on these cathedrals and these churches down there in the Americas from the conquistadors, trying to convert the Mayans, the Aztecs, and the Incas to Catholicism and their false sense of Christianity. Thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations, whither the Lord shall lead thee. And that's exactly what we are today. We're astonishment. We're a proverb. We're a byword. We're so-called Native Americans, not Gadites. We're so-called Seminole Indians, not Reubenites, Puerto Ricans instead of Ephraimites, Mexicans instead of Issacharites, So these are the bywords. These are the proverbs, the astonishment, man. These people are astonished at us. They love to see how we act, seeing that we act out of ignorance, man. Seeing that we are violent people toward each other, not toward them, toward each other. They love to see our women being ratchet. They love to see us being ghetto, acting a fool in public, acting an ass in public, man. We are their main court gestures. We are their main source of entertainment. Let's go on. It says the Gilder-Lehrman Institute of American History. With labor at a premium in the colonial American economy, there was no shortage of people seeking to purchase slaves. Both before and during African enslavement in the Americas, American Indians were forced to labor as slaves and in various other forms of unfree servitude. They worked in mines, on plantations, as apprentices, for artisans, and as domestics, just like African slaves and European indentured servants. As with Africans shipped to America, Indians were transported from their natal communities to labor elsewhere as slaves. That's a curse. That's one of the main curses we identified. Deuteronomy 28:68. And the Lord shall bring thee into bondage, into slavery, again with ships. By the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there you shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen, bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. It wasn't just these Negroes on these slave ships, man. It was the Northern Kingdom too. We was all on these slave ships together. We all in this captivity together. It says, many Indians from Central America were shipped to the West Indies. Also, a common destination for Indians transported out of Charleston, South Carolina, and Boston, Massachusetts. Many other Indians were moved hundreds or thousands of miles within the Americas. Sioux Indians from the Minnesota region could be found enslaved in Quebec, in Canada. And Choctaws from Mississippi and New England, a long-standing line of transportation of Indian slaves led from modern-day Utah and Colorado south into Mexico. Native Americans getting taken down to the Central and Southern Americas, The European trade in American Indians was initiated by Columbus in 1493. Needing money to pay for his New World expedition, he shipped Indians to Spain, where there already existed slave markets dealing in the buying and selling of Africans. Within a few decades, the Spanish expanded the slave trade in American Indians from the island of Hispaniola to Puerto Rico, Jamaica, Cuba, and the Bahamas. The great decline in the indigenous island populations, which largely owed to disease, that's that shall smite thee with pestilence so he consume you off the land, slaving and warfare, that's that smitten before your enemies, led the Spanish to then raid Indian communities in Central America and many of the islands just off the continent, such as Curacao, Trinidad, and Aruba. About 650,000 Indians in coastal Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and Honduras were enslaved in the 16th century. Conquistadors then entered the inland American continents and continued the process. Hernando de Soto, for instance, brought with him iron implements to enslave the people of La Florida on his famous expedition through the American Southeast into the Carolinas and west to the Mississippi Valley. Iron implements, right? Let's see. Is there another? I believe there is another curse that speaks on The iron. Really cool. Y'all know this one I'm looking for. Let's pull it up real quick, man. Deuteronomy 28:48. Therefore thou shalt serve thine enemies, with which the Lord shall send against thee in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he has destroyed thee. See that? That yoke of iron. Go back. See that? It says that yoke of iron brought with him iron implements to enslave the people of Florida on his famous expedition through the American Southeast into the Carolinas and west to the Mississippi Valley. Indians were used by the conquistadors as tamemes. Those are load carriers, burden holders, to carry their goods on these distant forays. Another form of Spanish enslavement of Indians in the Americas was conaje, which was similar to European serfdom, whereby Indians were tied to specific lands to labor rather than lords. So they were laborers of that land rather than a certain person. And under the encomienda system, Indians were forced to labor or pay tribute to an encomendero. Encomendero was your head of the encomienda system, which was in operation, who in exchange was supposed to provide protection and conversion to Christianity. That's that serving your gods with a stone. The encomenderos' power survived longest in frontier areas, particularly in Venezuela, Chile, Paraguay, and in the Mexican Yucatan in the 19th century. As legally defined in 1503, an encomienda, from Spanish encomendar, to entrust, consisted of a grant by the crown to a conquistador, a soldier, an official, or others of a specified number of Indios, Native Americans, and later Filipinos. Well, we ain't worried about those. We talking about the Americas right now. Living in a particular area, the receiver of the grant, the encomenderos, could exact tribute from the Indians in gold, in kind, or in labor, and was required to protect them and instruct or indoctrinate them in the Christian faith. The encomienda did not include a grant of land, but in practice, the encomienderos gained control of lands inhabited by the indigenous and failed to fulfill their obligations to the indigenous population. Failed to fulfill their obligations. The Crown's attempts to end the severe abuses of the system with the laws of Burgos 1512-13 and the new law of the Indies 1542 failed in the face of colonial opposition. Sounds like the emancipation. The what's that? What was that? The war between the North and the South. You know, even though they succeeded, the war between North and South, they succeeded in emancipating Negro slaves and letting them be able to travel freely through the Americas, but failed to face in the face of colonial opposition. In fact, a revised form of the repatriamiento system was revived after 1550. We'll get into those in the other videos. The repatriamiento, the hacienda system, and the asiento system. The encomienda was designed to meet the needs of the American colony's early mining economy, with the catastrophic decline in the Indian population and the replacement of mining activities by the agriculture in Spanish America. With the catastrophic decline of the Indian population to have consumed thee off the land, and the replacement of mining activities by agriculture in Spanish America, the system lost its effectiveness and was gradually replaced by the hacienda system of landed estates. The repartimiento system was a distribution of rights to Spanish colonialists and municipalities, which allowed them to extract forced but low-paid labor from local communities in conquered territories. Designed to replace the inefficient encomienda system, the repartimiento system was eventually only used for crucial industries such as food and clothes production and precious metal mining. Now, this is your encomienda system. The encomienda, the Spanish crown, granted a person a specified number of a specific community, with the indigenous leader in charge of mobilizing the assessed tribute and labor. In turn, encomenderos were to take responsibility for instruction in the Christian faith, protection from warring tribes and pirates, instruction in the Spanish language, and development of infrastructure. So basically, they were to run them and indoctrinate them and to teach them what to do, how to live, and what to believe in. And by doing that, they would protect them from other people, like pimping and hoeing. Now we're going to get into The Red Record by author John D. Morris, PhD, and Bruce Malone. The Red Record is well, let's just read right here. Indigenous creation narratives. The Red Record, the Walam Olam, presents a written history of the Lenni Lenape, or Delaware tribe, a large group of Native Americans that played a prominent role in colonial times. A majority of the work chronicles interactions between the European settlers and the tribe, but the earlier sections deal with their view of the origin of all things in a very good state, how that state was then lost due to evil, the resulting worldwide flood, which we can find in the Bible, and the migration of their ancestors from the old world to the new. Don't that sound like 2nd Ezra, chapter 13? But they took this counsel among themselves that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind has dwelt. For through that country there was a great way to go, namely 1.5 years, in the same region is called Azareth. Traveling from the old world to the new, to the Americas. It says, the Delaware Native Americans record lay in obscurity until republished in 1954 by the Indiana Historical Society under the title Walam Olam, or Red Score. The migration legend of the Lenni Lenape, or Delaware Indians. The history was subsequently declared by tribal elders to be authentic and representative of their oral traditions. The following columns outline the Walam Olam's original etchings. McCutcheon's translations and parallel events from the book of Genesis correct history, which they have noted. This finding is consistent with what historian Bill Cooper wrote. It was commonly found by missionaries all over the world that the people they encountered knew about the flood already. Their knowledge of it was startlingly in agreement with the book of Genesis. Secularists who claim all flood legends are myths bear the burden of explaining how so many different people groups from all around the world, from different parts and walks of life, from different time periods, which have so-called no connection with each other, retain accounts that so closely overlap the Genesis record. Now let's look at the Lenni Lenape's creation story. Beautiful. And I didn't even go into as much as was stated on it, and we could do that on the next video. I just grabbed some key things that really stood out to me. So this is their creation story. Above extended a swirling cloud, and within it a great spirit moved. Job 38:1. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind, a spinning cloud, and said, Job 40:6. Then answered the Lord unto Job out of the whirlwind, and said, Exodus 34:5. And the Lord descended into the cloud and stood with him there and proclaimed the name of the Lord. Acts 1:9. And when he had spoken these things, while they beheld, he was taken up, and a cloud received him out of their sight. Who was taken up? Our King, our Savior, our Lord Yahushua. Revelations 14:4. And I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and upon the cloud one sat like unto the Son of Man, having on his head a golden crown, and in his hand a sharp sickle. This is another oral tradition they keep. Again, the Great Spirit created the creator spirits. So, in their oral tradition, the greatest spirit created the spirits who created things. John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God. We all know who the Word is. And the Word was God, or was a God. Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. When you look up that word God in Genesis, it's plural, Elohim or Elohim, which makes this world plural more than one. So in the beginning, the Elohim or the gods created the heaven and earth. Again, the Spirit created the creator spirits. In the beginning, gods created the heaven and earth. John 1:3. All things were made by him, who? Our King, Jesus. And without him was not anything that was made. John 1:10. He was in the world, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not. Hebrews 1:2. Hath in these last days spoken unto us by his Son. God spoken unto us by his Son, who we call Yahushua, his true name in the Hebrew, whom he hath appointed heir of all things, by whom also he made the worlds. See how these creation stories, or how these oral traditions line up with our holy scriptures? Let's look at some more. At the beginning, the sea everywhere covered the earth. Genesis 1:1-2. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the spirit of the gods, Elohim, moved upon the face of the waters. Sea was everywhere, covered the earth. Bringing forth the day, the night, the stars. Genesis 1:3-5. And God said, let there be light. And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. Genesis 1:14-16. And God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. The seasons you could tell by the stars, the constellations in the sky, and what position or where they are at in the sky. That's how you can tell the seasons, what time of year we're in. You could tell the days by the moon. New moon begins a new month. Full moon, half the month. Another new moon, new month again. That's how you can tell your days are in. The hours of the day, you tell that by the sun. No. Verse 15, it says, let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. So verse 16, God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also, bringing forth the day, the night, and the stars. Bringing forth the sky, the earth, the clouds, the heavens. Genesis 1:6-8. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. You see how close they're creating. This is just a glimpse of their creation stories. They even have the account of the great flood. But you see how close that their creation stories match with our holy scriptures. And how could they not be Israelites? How could they not be our people? They even have an account of them traveling from the old world to the new, which Second Ezra speaks of us doing. They're not only that, this is one thing they have found amongst the Native Americans in the Americas. Let's look at this real quick.
And 6 feet, 606 feet, 606 feet, 606 feet. 606. It's made up of stades, exactly the same. Now, if that's not interesting enough, look at the angle of the Great Pyramid of Giza. If you take the angle of the Great Pyramid of Giza, the slope is 51.8 degrees. Let's go back to the earthworks. If you measure the line that goes straight through the center of the structure, right here, and then you go...
So this right here is a Native American structure. This right here is the Pyramid of Giza, which we know we built up the pyramids during Egyptian captivity.
True north, it's 51.8 degrees. That angle is exactly the same angle as the pyramids of Giza. It is the same math, the same calculations as ancient Egyptians. Let me show you one more connection. In 1860, David Wyrick, he's a guy who surveyed the Newark earthworks. He was digging into a mound near those earthworks, and he found a wooden coffin made of oak. They opened up the coffin and found a skeleton of a man holding a little box. It was about 8.10 inches in size. The box had been cemented shut here. This, by the way, is sitting in Ohio. Well, he opened up the box and he found a little man inside, a little black stone. They took it to scholars and they looked at it. The man seems to be carrying something, and there's writing here. At first, they couldn't recognize. The writing is, they thought in 1860, some sort of Hebrew. Well, finally, about 20 years later, they found some rabbis living in the area, and the rabbis looked at that, and they could read it. They said it was an old kind of block Hebrew, and it was a rendition of the Ten Commandments. Now, this is another piece. Block Hebrew. They said they'd never seen anything like it. Mainstream archaeologists at the time called this a hoax. But then in 1900...
Now, what would we be doing with these over here if we are not those people, especially written in the Paleo Hebrew, the Phoenician block Hebrew?
Or just about after 1900, in Israel, they found the same block-style Hebrew writing. Mainstream archaeologists still dismiss the findings. They found it in Israel, and they found it in Ohio. But there was another stone that they found that they couldn't argue. This is the Bat Creek stone. It was found during the course of an official Smithsonian evacuation. The Smithsonian didn't understand the meaning of the writing on the stone. They thought it was Cherokee, since it came from Cherokee country. They didn't realize that it's actually Hebrew. They had published this originally upside down. They threw it in a box at the bottom of the Smithsonian, put it in the basement. Many years later, a scholar took it out of the box, looked at it, and went, oh my gosh, it's upside down. It's Phoenician, ancient Hebrew. So what's going on here? What is that about? Where is that history? I'll show you in a few minutes, and we're going to have a conversation. I'm going to show you some more things that the Smithsonian, science, government, commerce colluded to erase. By the way, I want to thank the directors of the documentary Lost Civilizations of North America for bringing these stories to my attention. I was blown away. To find more, visit the website lostcivilizationdvd.com. Here's the thing we should be asking ourselves. I don't know the story of these. Do you know that? Did you know that? Do you live in Ohio and did you know that? Why not? Were the American Indians wronged? Yes. Yes. And that's what we focus on in America, is we were bad to the American. Forget about it. It's in the past. The question should be the ones that the founders asked. Who are they? What knowledge do they have? Can you imagine the difference we would have now if we would put our differences aside and put our past in the past and concentrate on today and say, let's learn from each other. What do you have? What is that?
Are we going?
What is that?
Rhetoric going.
When we come back, I'm going to be joined by Peter Lilback, who...
And you can look that up, is the Israelites, Native Americans and Taínos wrote in ancient Hebrew. You can look that up yourself. It's more on that, but just to go to show you, even these devils know who we are. And the forefathers did not ask, who are these people? They knew who we were. And they did what they did to us, knowing who we were. So now let's move on. Everybody knows Quetzalcoatl, Kukulkan, Kukulkan. Forgive me. Kukulkan, plumed or feathered serpent. Feathered serpent. Read Isaiah 6:2. Above it stood the seraphims. Each one had 6 wings. Seraphim. Each one had 6 wings. With twain, he covered his face, and with twain, he covered his feet, and with twain, he did fly. A seraphim, sharapah. Plural is plural in this verse, seraphim, so it's sharapayam. Serpent, fiery serpent, poisonous serpent, fiery from burning effect of poison. Seraph, seraphim, majestic beings with 6 wings. Quetzalcoatl was also known as the maker, modeler, which Yahweh Shai proved created the worlds, and begetter. Yahweh Shai is the only begotten son. Should say begotten. Maker of the blue-green plate, maker of the blue-green bowl. Maker of the blue-green bowl. That sounds crazy because we don't believe this world is a globe. We don't believe that there's planets outside this world. All of our stars, just as you read in Genesis, were put in the firmament. The sun and the moon was put in the firmament that was divided from the firmament outside, from the waters outside. So he was maker of the blue-green bowl. We believe our world is more of a terrarium. Now look at this. Don't this look like a blue-green bowl? And the Aztecs knew this. The Aztecs said he was the maker of the blue-green bowl, maker of the earth. So it says he wore a breastplate. Really, it was a conch. But if you read Isaiah 59:17, it says, for he put on, it's talking about our king, Yahweh Shai, as a breastplate. He put on righteousness as a breastplate and a helmet of salvation upon his head. And he put on the garments of vengeance for clothing and was clad with a zeal as a cloak. He was also known as the morning star. Revelations 22:16. I, Jesus, have sent my angel to testify against you these things in the churches. I am the root and the offspring of David, from the flesh, through the seed of David, the offspring of David, and the bright and morning star. He was also known as a trickster. Now, when you look up this word trickster, it means a cheat, a mean ruse, trick, deceit, treachery, cheating, a tricker. To cheat, to trick, to deceive, to be evasive, shuffle, a roguish prank, U.S. slang for robbery, the art of doing something, or what? Fail to take advantage of opportunity. To miss a trick means to fail to take advantage of opportunity. So if you're a trickster, you do what? You take advantage of an opportunity. Now, what was one of our forefathers named? Jacob. Which means a supplanter. Let's get this real quick. Yaquab, our forefather, the patriarch of the 12 tribes. A supplanter, a heel holder. Now, what did Yaquab do to his twin brother Esau? He tricked him into giving him a birthright. Well, he really didn't trick him. He told him. Basically, when Esau came, tried to get the birthright, he wanted the soup that Yaquab was cooking. He couldn't wait, couldn't be patient for it. Yaquab told him the soup wasn't done. He said, well, give me your birthright. Esau said, what good is my birthright if I'm about to die? So he gave him the birthright. But what did Yaquab do later under the instruction of his mother? He put on Esau's mantle, which was hairy, so he could smell like Esau, feel like Esau. And then he went to his father Isaac and he got the blessing from Esau. So he tricked his father Isaac, or was a trickster in true form, and got the blessing. And it was all ordained by our God. You feel me? So that we can have that blessing and not Esau. Quetzalcoatl. The name Quetzalcoatl comes from the Nahuatl language, which means precious serpent. Quetzalcoatl, the feather serpent. 17th century, a descendant of Aztec royalty and historian of the Nahua people wrote Quetzalcoatl in its literal sense means serpent of precious feathers, but in allegorical sense, wisest of men. Now, for all of us who are in the know, our King Yahushua, and this is who Quetzalcoatl is to the Aztecs. This is Jesus. This is their Jesus. This was their account in their documentation, their oral tradition of our King Jesus. Now we know that Yahushua was King Solomon, which was considered who the wisest man of the East. But yet, even still, we know that Yahushua is the wisest out of all of us. He's the one who taught us. He is the Word himself. John 1:1, the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was a God. John 1:14, the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory of as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. Deuteronomy 4:6, keep therefore and do them. What? The law, statutes, and commandments. Where can we find the law, statutes, and commandments? This is the beat up one. This is the one I have for you. The Word. Right? It says, for this is your wisdom, the wisest of men. This is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations, which shall hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. And what did Yahushua say? Hebrews 10:7. And also King David, when he prophesied, spoke of Yahushua and said this same word. Then said I, lo, I come in the volume of the book, the Holy Bible. It is written of me to do thy will, O God. So now, man, wish I had more slides on this. Like I said, we're going to do more research, going to find out more things, dig up more things, get more truth out here, and we're going to bring this stuff to the light, you know. But that was the end of this slide, the end of the presentation. I hope everything was edifying. You know, want to give all praises, honor, glory once again to Yahweh Bashem Mashiach Yahushua, and say shalom. Hope y'all enjoyed this presentation.